Hello, I'm Ajahn Jotipālo. Welcome to Sauntering into Silence. Looks like I'm practicing social distancing to an extreme again. It's actually fun being outside. It's actually not as cold as it might look, but I think with the social distancing that everybody hopefully is experiencing, that it unfortunately is probably bringing up some discomfort and maybe even tensions around where people live, being in close proximity to people for much longer periods of time than maybe we're used to. I can imagine, the stress of that might be creating hassles for people, or just tensions arising. So having lived in community for probably close to 25 years now, even before I became a monk, I spent a lot of time living in various communities. And so maybe I've got a few things that I could share about that. In the Buddhist monastic code, which we use every year at Abhayagiri, where I trained, there's a section, it's in a section of rules called the Sangharisesa rules, and it's very specific. There's a discussion in the Sangharisesa 8, Ajahn Jeff, in his explanation of this rule, points out a few places in the Chulawaga. I think there's actually like 4 different lists of ways to compose your mind, considerations that we should take before we give somebody feedback. It's kind of a harsh term, but we use the word admonishment in the monastic terminology. But yeah, so just giving somebody feedback about behavior. So if someone's annoying you and you want to say something to them, or if you just see them doing something wrong in a monastic sense, like maybe they don't understand a rule and you want to point it out to them, the Buddha gives a list of things that people should consider. And in one of the lists, there's most of these lists, I think, all have 5 things to consider. And let's see, I'm terrible with lists, so I wrote them down so I wouldn't forget all of them. Just type in Buddhist monastic code in Google search, and you should get Access to Insight, or just go to Access to Insight website. And if you go to the discussion of Sangharisesa 8, which in the online version I was looking at was page 136, there's actually a few other places where it actually gives lists of why you wouldn't want to listen to somebody giving you feedback. So the Buddha was very methodical and well thought out. But the first 5 are just making sure before you say something to somebody, are you actually pure yourself? Looking at your own intentions, looking at your behavior. So first is look at your physical conduct. How are you in the world? Second one is your verbal conduct. Are you somebody who speaks truthfully, somebody who speaks beautifully? And so it's this internal looking inward first. Then looking at your motivation. So why do you want to say something to this person? Is it because you just want to be vindictive? They've done something that then causes you to feel discomfort, so you want to say something to them, basically just to vent? Or is really the intention goodwill? Is it you see the person actually hurting themselves, hurting the community, and you just want to give them some positive feedback in a way that will make life easier for them? So looking at your motivation. Then the way it's phrased in the Chulawaga is, are you learned in the Dhamma? So I could take that as, the thing you want to admonish the person about. This is one way of looking at it. The thing you want to admonish the person about, do you really have the facts? Do you really know the situation? Is it something that you're qualified to even speak about? So just paying attention to that. And then kind of this ties into that also, is like, are you versed in the rules? And so both the patimokkha's, one for the monks and one for the nuns, do you actually really understand the rules? So that would be for a monastic setting up, admonishing somebody else about the rules. Then this next 5, I took this as a basis for an entire year. I took on a practice of, if I knew I had spoken in such a way that my motivation was just not good. Like if I had been irritated and I spoke out of just being rash, or if I was irritated and just wanted to, sort of bounce that energy up back to somebody else, just being rude, impolite. If I knew that I ever spoke out of that kind of attitude, I determined for an entire year that I would seek out that person and I would ask forgiveness. And it's quite an amazing practice that I did. And but I set up a bunch of parameters for myself when I did that. And the first was, and this is part of our rules as monastics, is if we are going to give somebody feedback, we have to ask permission of the person to be able to do that, because the other person may just be in a really bad mood and doesn't want to hear it, or they do want to hear it, but they're really in a stressful period of time, and so it just honors the other person to be able to allow them to stop to respond to you and say, yeah, I do want to hear it. And so it gives them the opportunity to be more receptive as well, instead of just coming at them and then they can be very defensive. So it gives the opportunity for them to be receptive. And so asking permission. And then this next set of 5 rules is finding the right time. So I often find, like, if I've said something rude to somebody or I'm irritated, that is not the best time to bring up something. It's better to wait until, it's like when I do say something that I can tell, maybe hurt somebody, for a while, if you just watch their behavior, you can see that they're maybe afraid of you even, or just, they're backing off from you. And they're intuitive to be able to know, this isn't a good time to speak to Jotipālo. And so you just wait until you see the person smile at you, or just in a situation that's completely removed. And then you can just ask the person, at that point, hey, can we talk about that interaction we had this morning? So that brings up the second point, which is when you bring up something, make it factual. And so it's like being very specific. So like at 7:30 this morning when I said this to you, and so it's not getting into like generalities like you always annoy me, or you're always like this. It's like, no, give them very specific details, as much information as you can remember without overburdening somebody. Third aspect is, do you speak gently? Can you speak gently? Can you set that as your intention? Ajahn Sona here at Birkin often talks about practicing the mood that you want to be in. So like if you do know you want to go and speak to somebody, and you might get upset or they might get upset, and obviously finding the right time to do it would be better, but practicing in your mind, like, okay, how can I say this to the person in a way that's going to be pleasant, that's going to be easy for me to say, easy for them to hear it. So thinking of that way, just having the intention to be gentle in the way that you say it. And then this is kind of related to being factual, but the fourth one is what you speak about and what you bring up to the person, and in the details, make sure it's connected to this. Make sure it's connected to the very specific thing that you're talking about. So just sticking to facts, and that it's connected to the case is what this is here. And then again, this comes back to being gentle, and it's like the third time. This fifth one, this is the third time it sort of comes up, and it's speaking with the mind of goodwill. That noise is they're moving a ladder to clean off the solar panels because of snow. So the fourth item on this list is what you bring up to the person. Make sure it's connected to the case. So that's very similar to is it being factual. So it's like, again, not going off on tangents and say like, you're like this, and then last week you did this, and the week before that you did that. But it's no, just stick to that one particular item if you're giving feedback. And then this is the fifth one is interesting. That I think this is like the third time it's shown up in this list of just 10. But it's coming from goodwill. Again, metta. And first it was like, are you are you motivated by metta and not being vindictive? This one says, you're coming from goodwill and not averse. So slightly different mind states, but you get the point that it's your motivation should never be out of anger or trying to change the other person because you don't like their behavior. So very quickly, I mentioned that I took on this practice for a year of asking forgiveness if I ever did anything that I knew, just even at whatever level, was just coming from aversion. Okay, so I hope that I've shared something that can be of value in these difficult times of social isolation, a lot of uncertainty. Thanks for watching. Got a little bit of snow.